Ryan, why are you arguing that SpaceX should postpone its Mars missions? Do you think you're smarter than Elon Musk? No, but please hear me out. Hi, I'm Ryan F. Gassian, and I want to talk about SpaceX's mission to Mars. Like Elon Musk, I believe colonizing Mars and becoming a multi-planetary species is critical to humanity's survival. But I disagree with his decision to go to Mars before fully colonizing the moon. Now, I should note that Musk is not against building a moon base. In fact, he has argued that NASA should do it. It's just that he believes that the moon isn't a valuable option if our goal is to set up a second Earth. I agree, but I still think a strong case can be made for why we should colonize the moon first. You might be wondering why we are even having this debate. I mean, colonizing Mars, that's a century or two off, right? Well, if we were talking about this 5 years ago, I would agree. But Musk has a long track record of making the unthinkable possible. The reason why colonizing Mars is now feasible centers around the BFR, or more affectionately called the Big Fucking Rocket. If it meets expectations, it would represent a revolutionary step forward in space travel. The biggest deterrent to colonizing Mars is cost. The Apollo program, which sent astronauts to the moon, cost the US $25.4 billion in the 1960s. Now, the moon is only 384,400 kilometers from the Earth, whereas Mars is 54.6 million kilometers. Also, the lunar module could only transport 3 people at a time and required the largest rocket ever built, the Saturn V, just to get it out of orbit and on its way. Not even the space shuttle, which could transport more people, is ideal for this daunting task. The BFR is different. Not only will it be bigger than the Saturn V, but its Raptor engines will be able to provide 52,700 kilonewtons of thrust, compared to the Saturn V's 34,800 kilonewtons. That means it can lift much heavier payloads. More importantly, unlike all existing spacecraft, the BFR is touted to be 100% reusable. This is because SpaceX has mastered vertical landing. To understand just how revolutionary this is, Elon Musk uses the analogy of the private jet versus the airliner. Now, the airliner can transport more people and go further than the private jet, but it also costs more to build. You might think that the private jet is the cheaper choice, but what if we made the private jet single use, meaning that you had to buy a new jet every time you wanted to fly? Suddenly, the airliner becomes the preferred option because all you must replace is the fuel. In the past, this is how space travel worked. Instead of reusing spent rockets, we allow them to fall into the ocean or burn up in re-entry. Even in the case of the shuttle, only the shuttle itself could be reused. The boosters and fuel tanks had to be replaced after each launch, drastically raising up the cost. But because of the SpaceX's patented vertical landing technology, they can bring their booster rockets safely back to the Earth to be used again, as well as cut down on the time between launches. Even with these cost-saving measures, a one-way ticket to Mars would still be unaffordable if all the BFR did was ferry people to the Red Planet. That's why SpaceX plans to eventually phase out its Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy, and Dragon to let the BFR perform their missions. The BFR will become an all-in-one spacecraft, cargo freighter, passenger liner, and even debris sweeper. There are even plans for the BFR to shuttle people between Earth's major cities, reducing a trip from Hong Kong to New York City to half an hour. While I'm skeptical of the Earth missions, this strategy would bring down costs considerably, perhaps eventually to a point that a middle-income family could afford a trip to Mars. That all having been said, providing people with affordable transport to the Red Planet, while still a significant breakthrough, solves only one of the 3 major obstacles I foresee in colonizing Mars. The other 2 are safety and sustainability. And it's for these reasons why I think we should first develop the moon before tackling the bigger challenge that is Mars. Let's talk about safety. While we like to think of space as a vacuum, it isn't. It is flooded with cancer-inducing cosmic rays and solar winds. Here on Earth, we are protected by our planet's atmosphere, particularly the ozone layer, as well as its magnetic field. Mars, however, lost its magnetic field billions of years ago. That's why it's an arid rock instead of being covered in oceans. And its atmosphere is only 1% of our own. Theoretically, we could bury our colonies underground, or place an oversized magnetic dipole at the Mars-Lagrange point. That would protect people on Mars, but what about those in transit? Elon Musk estimates that a one-way trip to Mars will take 260 days. That's 260 days where the colonists will be trapped with nothing but a relatively thin sheet of metal shielding them from the cosmic radiation. Even if SpaceX goes to the moon, it will still have to figure out a solution to this problem, but at least travel time there will be 3 days instead of 260, which people have managed before. Also, if something were to go wrong, SpaceX could mount a rescue mission. Next is sustainability. Attempts in the past to create a fully enclosed ecosystem have been met with failure. The last was Biosphere 2, a dome located in Oracle, Arizona. First in 1991, and then again in 1994, groups of scientists tried to survive within it for an extended period. In both instances, the mission had to be aborted early. In the case of the first, reasons included oxygen leakage, which was complicated further by spikes in CO2 emissions, most likely due to bacteria in the soil and a loss of biodiversity. As for the latter, this had more to do with mismanagement and infighting, so we can't say with certainty that all the problems faced in 1991 have been adequately addressed. Frankly, before either a moon or Mars mission can be manned, another experiment should be conducted with Biosphere 2 or a facility of similar design. However, if we must try this beyond Earth, ill-advised as far as I'm concerned, it makes more sense to attempt it on the moon. Again, should something go wrong, the moon's proximity to the Earth will allow SpaceX to mount a rescue mission. Also, while the moon makes a poor candidate for a second Earth, it is ideal for developing the kind of infrastructure needed to support long-term missions to Mars or anywhere else in the solar system. Where are we going to build the magnetic dipole needed to protect the red planet? The BFR is big, but if we had large 3D printers on the moon, with its gravity being only 16.6% of the Earth's, we could construct structures that would make the BFR look like the Falcon 1. And remember, given the distance between Earth and the moon, the time it would take to fully develop it would be considerably shorter than in the case of Mars. Within a decade, we could have a few thousand people living there, mining the moon for raw materials, as well as building newer and more powerful spacecraft, possibly even a real-life enterprise. I'm sort of joking with that part, but still, once we've developed the moon, the sky's the limits. For example, we can't risk using nuclear pulse rockets in or near Earth's atmosphere, but there's no reason not to once we're beyond the moon. Such rockets would be capable of a meganewton of thrust. We could build a spacecraft able to venture to Jupiter, and if we're adventurous enough, Alpha Centauri. It could also speed up the colonization of Mars. Imagine instead of sending BFRs, we send cruise ship-sized colony ships, able to reach Mars not in 260 days, but under a week. Musk hopes to have 1 million people living on Mars in 50 years. If we had nuclear pulse rockets, why just 1 million? Why not 10 million? And while we're at it, why colonize just Mars? There are the moons Europa and Titan, not to mention Venus, that would make excellent candidates for colonization. Venus' surface might be closest thing to hell, but 50 miles up? Well, it's practically paradise, if you ignore the sulfuric acid in the atmosphere. Still, it wouldn't be too difficult to protect our structures with anti-acid coating. And given that its atmosphere is 95 times our own, a light structure could float over it like a boat on water. Remember Cloud City in The Empire Strikes Back? Well, we soon could have our own. And again, the moon would be the ideal place to build such shiny new cities. Getting it from the moon's surface to orbit wouldn't be that difficult. We could build a few space elevators to haul it up. On Earth, a space elevator would require a tether stronger than anything we have today. The moon is a different story. The lower gravity means we can build it with Kevlar. Then all we have to do is anchor it to something and power it with solar panels. Ion thrusters could be used to move our cloud cities to Venus. Slow, but who cares? Once they touch down, they'll be ready to go. Given that Venus's gravity is almost comparable to the Earth's, it would be trickier to connect it to the orbit via a space elevator, but considering that it's higher up, the tether wouldn't have to be as long. Still, the possibilities are endless. Why not build another cloud city and send it to Mars or Europa? It could then be used as an anchor for a space elevator. Again, both Mars and Europa gravity is less than the Earth, so Kevlar would be sufficient. This would negate the need for a BFR to land. Instead, fuel and passengers would ride elevators up to orbit and board the rocket from there. Last, and this is key if we want to become a true interplanetary species, we need to mine the asteroid belts. I envision the moon being a port of call for ore haulers. The metals there will either be used to expand our space infrastructure or be ferried down to the Earth. The first trillionaire might very well be the person who figures out how to mine an asteroid. No matter which strategy SpaceX decides to go with, there will always be setbacks, and yes, some people will die. That's unavoidable. People died when our ancestors sailed to the New World. Mars and the Moon are far more inhospitable places than the Americas. However, by going to the Moon first, I believe SpaceX could avoid the kind of catastrophe that would jeopardize their space program, while also building infrastructure needed to colonize not just Mars, but the rest of the solar system. Thank you for listening, and please help my channel by liking this video and subscribing. Oh, and visit my website at www.darknessinamerica.com to read my short stories about a future United States where people live in fear of inquisitors, telepathic assassins who police the populace for thought crimes.